Greetings, fellow songwriters and seekers, and welcome back to Muse Measure. If you haven't done so yet, hit the guide Lotus pedal down below and subscribe to our channel. All right, I have a question today from Larry in Boston. He asks, when you're writing, do you start by protecting the feeling of the song at all costs? Or are you willing to sacrifice emotional immediacy to serve structure, craft, or long-term meaning? And how do you know which one the song is asking for? Well, thank you, Larry. That's a very deep question, really stretching my mental capacity for thinking about songwriting. And this is great because this is why we're here. So I would say emotional immediacy is what we're going for in songs. Songs are a way of communicating emotions. They are also a way of communicating concepts and sensory experience, but those serve some type of emotion. Now, the emotion might evolve and you might not know which emotion you're trying to convey or which emotion is going to come out of it. But emotion is the key to songwriting. And I'm not saying that I always succeed at that. Sometimes my songs can be a little too cerebral. They may be too concept-based or too maybe even poetic, so that the listener has the work of interpreting the lyrics more than feeling emotions. But I feel like I've failed as a songwriter if I don't make them feel something. Now, the feeling should be connected with some kind of concept or thought, but it's okay if it doesn't too. I mean, you just think about absolute music, which is music just for the sake of music, which is just music that is only communicating what the music's communicating. It's not saying, oh, I'm going to communicate heartbreak, or I'm going to communicate sadness or anger. The music communicates what it wants to communicate. So that's another important caveat there, because sometimes you don't know what you're trying to communicate. And all this should be taken with a grain of salt, because the type of songs that I create, I think of myself much more as an experimental songwriter, where I don't know what I'm getting into when I start to write a song. Now, most of the time that's true, but sometimes I have a very strong feeling. So I'm very upset about something, or I'm very happy about something, and I know that that's what I want to convey in the song. But most of the time I'm discovering as I go along what the song has to offer, and also what my psyche and my consciousness and just what's going on in my mental state, what that has to offer. And I don't know how you are, but being a man, I'm not the best at knowing what I'm feeling, especially, being a male of the Generation X, where we still have that lingering expectation for men and boys to subdue their emotions, to not be so connected to it. Now, that's evolved and changed, thank goodness, but I've still come from a time period where I was told, don't be so sensitive, don't be so emotional. And I was an emotional kid, but I was told to subdue it. So a lot of times I don't know what my emotions are about certain things. So the song is a way of discovering those things. So this is how songwriting is also a spiritual practice, that you are learning about the nature of your mind, and you're learning about the nature of your consciousness, and dealing with these strange emotions that crop up at the same time as you are crafting something. So that's why this question is so potent. I could spend probably hours talking about it. It's just that sometimes you know exactly what you want to communicate in a song. Sometimes you have a story to tell. Sometimes you have something you want to tell someone. And it's also what kind of songwriter you are. If you're trying to write Nashville hits or pop hits, more power to you. Maybe you are trying to, you're trying to get the audience to feel a certain emotion, and you're going to try to do that as efficiently as possible. Now, maybe because of my, snobbery, or it's not really snobbery, because I really love pop music and I love, classic country music. It's not about that. It's just that my mind doesn't work like that. And so it's a little bit different for me. And if you are able to do that, that's great. There's nothing wrong with that. I don't want to cast aspersions towards that type of writing. So just back to your question, do you sacrifice emotional immediacy to serve structure? Well, never structure, because for me, structure is there to get you out of a problem when your creativity paints you into a corner. So you're like, oh, where am I right now? what have I done? Where's all these strange chord progressions and this melody and these ideas and poetic language? Where's it taken me? And I feel like I'm lost. And so I can go back to structure and say, okay, well, let's switch parts here. Now maybe I need a bridge now, or I need to return to something. It's gotten too alienating, so I need to return to a verse structure or a chorus structure or a bridge or do something. So structure is there to help us. It's just like, if you're having problems getting around, or you're having some kind of injury, the structures around you are there to support you, to think about those as supports. Craft, songwriting craft is all about conveying emotions, so you don't want to get rid of emotional immediacy in the service of craft. Craft serves the emotions, and if you're really, really strong in your craft, then you're very good at making people feel certain emotions. You know what will get people to feel a certain thing. But for me also, I just there are other emotions besides the basic ones. There's other experiences besides falling in love or heartbreak. And even within those, there are all kinds of gradations. It's not just a cliche cookie cutter thing where if I say this or I portray, somebody weeping in a corner, that's going to elicit some kind of emotion. And if I'm doing that, I'm really manipulating somebody's emotions. I'm not being honest with them. I'm just trying to get them to feel something so that I can check that off that little box, and then I've completed what I needed to do in the song. I think songs have much more potential than that, and human beings have much more potential than that, than just a nice little Hallmark card that's, that make you feel appreciated for the 30 seconds, and then you throw the card away or maybe keep it forever. But I think that what's really poignant for people is something that is kind of surprises them, like, oh, I've never felt that way before, or I've never quite felt that way in this context before. This is something new. And I think our memory works that way too. We forget all the stuff that is just humdrum, dead concepts, day-to-day mundane stuff. It is the special little moments that we remember. And every day can have all those things. The mundane can have all those things, but it takes a shift in our perception. So I think the craft for me is, how can I shift the perception so all of a sudden this mundane, everyday, cliche moment can all of a sudden have new life in it, and can be something special, as opposed to something that we've done 1,000 times. Okay? And then long-term meaning, not quite sure what you mean by that, but maybe just the overall meaning of the song. Yeah, that's something to keep in mind. Like, what do you want to have the overall impression be of the song, or what do you want the listener to take away from the song? But oftentimes you don't discover that until you're done. And then you go, oh, well, this song is about mourning and feeling really sad about the loss of somebody. And then you can go back and look at the craft of it and say, where did I push that along? Where did I develop that in the song? And where was I just filling space and not moving that along? And that's where you can go in and edit. So I think that idea of the long-term meaning is important for the revising aspect. Then you can look back at your song and like, okay, well, this line, it doesn't serve much purpose. It's a nice image, but does it serve the emotion that I'm trying to convey? So that's something to look at. Okay? And then how do you know which one the song is asking for? So structure, craft, or long-term meaning. Songs are just asking for the ability to be heard, to provide an experience. And so sometimes it takes a while, just like when you get to know somebody, to know what they're about and what's driving them. So the same thing with a song. You don't want to overdetermine that from the get-go, where you're just like, okay, I'm going to write a song about how my father didn't love me the way I wanted him to. That's a legit song. But if you are so married to that, you are not going to discover anything new in the process of writing. So you got to have this freedom to make new connections, musically and lyrically, so that you're surprising yourself. And then you'll be delighted. And I think that delight will carry over in the song, and it'll take the song up to another level, as opposed to just being, here's another song about daddy issues, or here's another song about heartbreak or disappointment. So sorry to be so convoluted and beating around the bush so much with this, but I think emotional immediacy is what you're trying to do in a song. But surprise is also an essential element. So craft and structure are very, very important. And it's something we do with our exercises and why we write all kinds of bad songs to get better and better at craft, and why we listen to music with the purpose of learning from the music to develop our craft. But the craft is there when we get into trouble, where we start to fail because we've gone too far, or we painted ourselves in a corner musically. We've taken ourselves down a road. Our imagination has gotten really, really excited, taken us someplace, and it's been really cool and exciting so far. But then we get into a situation where, this isn't working anymore. That's when the craft and structure comes in, and you can bring it back. So what I've noticed about my songs lately is I will start with a structure, like, okay, well, I'm starting with a verse, just like 99% of the songs. But then, it'll go to a chorus. But then I get bored with the structure, and I want the song to say something else or to expand itself, get out of its comfort zone. And so usually I have like this bridge that just morphs and does all kinds of crazy stuff. And then once it gets to a crazy place where, okay, we don't know where we are anymore, this isn't Kansas anymore, then we can go back to a structure. So I might go back to a verse or a chorus. Now, on my last album on Octave Records called Fools Live with Faith, I even abandoned that, where I was like, I don't need to go back to the verse or a chorus at the end. I don't need to have a bookend here. I can just have it evolve and morph and change, and then where it ends up is where it ends up. It doesn't have to make a nice circle and go back home again. So that's another thing. And sometimes that works, and sometimes it doesn't. But once again, craft and structure are there to help us when we get into a place where our imagination has taken us to a point where it's no longer working. Okay. So maybe you're even more confused now than when you initially had this question. Maybe you were just asking something much simpler, and I apologize if I did that. But I really think that these are the things that all the forces that are working in our creative process that are challenging us. And it's just too easy sometimes to just play it safe, stick to a structure, stick to the craft that we know, just do another cookie cutter thing. And, write your song of the day or your song of the week, and then, just throw it in the pile of songs, and then maybe 1 out of 10 or 1 out of 100, something that sticks out, and that's something you present to somebody. I like to do it a different way. I like to take my idea and then just see where it leads to, and not be so married to verse, chorus, bridge, chorus, done. I like the structure to meet the demands of the imagination and where the song wants to go, so that the song has its own personality and its own life, and it's not just a pop song, a country song, a rock song. All right. Well, best of luck with this writing. I would love to know how this goes for you. And please put your comments down below and just let me know if I answered your question or if you have other follow-up questions, and how this process is going for you. All right. Take care.